Michelle. Hi, I'm Stephanie Michelle. Now, I didn't decide to become transgender because of some liberal ideology, but rather I have suffered with gender dysphoria since my earliest childhood memories. And I decided to transition when I was a fundamentalist Christian, a dispensationalist attending classes at Philadelphia Biblical University, where it was actually my professor, a Christian counselor, who encouraged me to reconsider my transgenderism regarding the DSM-4 criteria. The problem is that Christians think that the Bible condemns transgenderism, when in truth, the Bible never even mentions once transgenderism. People think of Deuteronomy 22:5, but that does not condemn transgenderism, where the text does not state women shall not wear the clothing of a man, but rather Kelly Gever, which literally refers to the items or armor of a male warrior, and where the text also does not state that a man shall not wear the clothing of a woman, but rather where it states that a Gever, a male warrior, shall not wear the simlath isha, the dress of a woman. And it is important that the Hebrew word for man, ish, is not used here, but rather the Hebrew word gever, meaning a male warrior. Nor is the generic word for man, enosh, used here. Indeed, the ancient world had a completely different concept of transgenderism. They had no conception of gender identity or gender dysphoria, but rather their worldview ideology involved masculine versus feminine, an active partner versus a passive partner, but where they certainly saw ambiguity or what we can describe as intersex conditions, which I'll mention momentarily. But first I want to discuss biblical exegesis. When I was a student at Philadelphia Biblical University, my textbook was Basic Bible Interpretation by Dr. Roy B. Zuck from Dallas Theological Seminary, where of course I was taught the three principles of observation, interpretation, and application. Observation: what does the text say to its original audience? Of course, involving the dispensational hermeneutic of a consistent, literal, historical, and grammatical interpretation of the Bible. Interpretation: what does the text mean? Regarding its overall principle. And application: how can we renegotiate with the text in order to give meaning to our modern day context? Where of course we need to avoid exegesis, or reading our own modern day context, our modern day ideology into the biblical text. Now, I do think that there are two biblical texts that are important to the context of modern day transgenderism, where I am convinced that the ancient mindset saw transgenderism under the broad category called eunuch. Matthew 19:10-12, where it mentions the eunuchoi, those born eunuchs and those made eunuchs by men, as well as the eunuchason yaltos, diaten, basaleanton, uranon, those who have made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of the heavens. Where interestingly, the context for the eunuchs here is mentioned in the Mishnah, Yevamoth 8-6, regarding the rabbinical category of Sarasim, eunuchs, in regards to the rituals of Yibum and Chalitza, mentioned in Deuteronomy 25:5-10, which is also expanded in the Talmud, Yevamoth 70a-84a, which, like Jesus, mentions two categories of eunuchs: Seris Chama, literally son eunuchs, meaning eunuchs that are born that way, and Seris Adam, those that are made eunuchs by men. But where it also mentions in this broad category of eunuch three other subcategories: the Ilonith, the ram-like woman, a woman who has masculine characteristics; the androgynos, meaning an androgyny, meaning a hermaphrodite or androgynous person, an intersexed individual; and the tumtum, a Hebrew word that basically means this, that, referring to someone of ambiguous gender, or what today might best be labeled as transgender. Lastly, I want to mention Isaiah 56, 3-5, which mentions the Sarasim, the eunuchs which keep the Sabbath, allegedly referring to an eschatological or future context, and where they are given a Shem Olam, an eternal name, which of course implies persecution and martyrdom, but also undeniably blessing from Tetragrammaton. So this is the ancient context which needs to be applied today, and which certainly doesn't imply discrimination against transgenderism. Thank you for coming and watching me today. In the Aramaic language of the Sefer Zohar, the Book of Radiance, Ta, Kazeh, come, see. Shalom, peace.